Joseph Thomas, and I am here with Couchside, our interview podcast. Now, I'm with the podcast, as you can see, but I'm also with another special individual here. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I am dwangoAC. I'm the keeper of TaskBot. My actual name is Alan Cecil, but I never go by that online. I'm a lot of various different things. I have many titles. Which would you like to know about?
Well, let's start with the one that you're probably most well known for, the keeper of TaskBot. Give us a rundown of what that kind of means.
So one of the aspects of TaskBot that's the most public is TaskBot's appearances at Games Done Quick charity events. And TaskBot is a robot that connects into real video game consoles through the controller port and plays video games as fast as the console can possibly handle it. In other words, TaskBot is basically a player piano. I plug him into the controller ports, we hit play on a sequence of predefined button presses, he sends them off to the console and plays games perfectly, often breaking the console in the process. Not permanently, just hacking it a little bit.
Just enough to have some fun, and no quarter needed with TaskBot.
Right. TaskBot mostly does this for charity events, so there's an actual purpose to the madness.
Mm-hmm. So TAS, as I've learned to understand it, stands for Technology-Assisted Speedruns.
We're close. Tool-assisted speedrun, yes.
Tool-assisted. See, I messed up. But you know what? That's where you learn. You learn from people like you, the experts. And so a tool-assisted speedrun, what in just simple, I guess, layman's words, would that be to anybody who kind of has maybe seen a basic speedrun but wouldn't know what a TAS is?
Well, let's actually fall back all the way to explaining what a basic speedrun is, because some people haven't even been exposed to that yet. And one of the things that's interesting about video games is there are many different ways to play it. Some people just fall down pits all the time. It's not my thing, but some people just like doing that for the lulz. But other people like to practice a game and get better at it. And at a certain point, especially if you're playing an old classic Nintendo game in particular, because these were well known for this, you get to a point where you have a certain amount of skill at the game and you're able to complete the game for the first time. And there's that wonderful feeling. But it took you weeks to get to that point. And then you might maybe play it again just because the game was so much fun. And it might take half the time it took you last time. And speedrunning is the process of seeing how fast you as a human can complete a game. Now, the interesting history of this is that around the time the first Metroid game was released, they added an in-game timer to track how long it took you to complete the game. And the end credits screen would be different based on how quickly you accomplished the game, how quickly you finished it. That was the first well-known, it wasn't necessarily the very first, but it was the first well-known sanctioned in-game timer to incentivize people to play the game again as fast as they could.
Yeah.
And that
rather
sort
than
of
just getting the highest score. Yeah.
Right, because before that was things like Twin Galaxy, where Twin Galaxy was more focused on can you get the highest score in Pac-Man, or have a perfect game of Donkey Kong, or things along those lines where the goal you had was to simply score points. And some games, that's not that entertaining. Quite honestly, even some of the arcade games, after about the 7th hour, start to wear on you for a while. So the idea of doing a speedrun kind of manifested out of that. There were other prior art examples. It wasn't necessarily the first game that did it, but it certainly was the most notable. And out of it grew communities like Speed Demos Archive, SDA. Speed Demos Archive was a website, and is a website that's still around, that really popularized the idea of taking a normal game that wasn't necessarily designed for speedrunning and trying to figure out how to beat it as fast as possible. Now the other side of this... Go ahead.
Speed Demos, didn't it start, or I guess the name of it at least started, because you could save a demo in like Doom or Quake or something of that nature, and those demos could be sent in and played on the hardware, in the game program as if it was a video, except it was playing it basically a real-time recreation of the footage. It was kind of an early game capture format.
In many ways, yes. And that brings us to some interesting technology discussions, because in the early days, it wasn't easy to capture video. In fact, it was kind of a pain. So methods that had in-game hooks like that were actually very popular, and a number of games, especially from id Software, particularly Doom, were famous for this. The hilarious thing is that while Doom might have originated speedrunning in that form, it also caused something called Doom Done Quick, which was more than just Well, I'll phrase it this way. There are different ways to play Doom. One way to play Doom is the Doom Done Quick method, which is to have a human involved. There are other ways which add in tools, where maybe you play the game at a ridiculously slow speed, or maybe you use a huge number of save states, so you're saving the game as you're going through the level and trying to perfect it. And that really was one of the earliest well-known inside of the speedrunning community ways of doing a tool-assisted speedrun, but the idea of a tool-assisted speedrun was not well known and was not well codified. That happened in 2003, but more on that in a second. So I should back up a little bit. I have an obvious bias. I am on staff as the ambassador for taskvideos.org. And in that capacity, my goal is to bridge the gap between the speedrunning community for real-time runners, RTA runs, and the tool-assisted speedrun community. And the reason that that's kind of important is because there have, at various times, been rifts between those two communities.
I'd imagine there's a little bit, yeah, because they look at it as some kind of cheating almost, I'd say.
Exactly. And in 2003, before the advent of YouTube, a very interesting video circulated around the internet. It was from someone named Morimoto, and it just simply said Super Mario Bros. 3 Time Attack, misspelled and everything. It had no information in English, and linked to a Japanese website that no one in the English-speaking world can understand. This wasn't exactly the days of just being able to send it through Google Translate, so it was kind of a challenge to figure out what this video was, and it showed Super Mario Bros. 3 being played in 11 some odd minutes in the most ridiculous way possible. You've got Mario getting 99 lives and taking ridiculous risks and hopping over piranha plants with merely a pixel of width, and just insanity that didn't make any sense. It was very surprising to people who saw it, and especially confusing to people who did not know how it was made. It caused problems because people watching it had no way to know that it was made with tools. And it really upset people in the Speed Demos Archive community, because what they saw was a fraud. They saw a cheater. They saw something that was to be ignored and tossed out and ridiculed. And other people saw it and went, hey, I didn't know you could push the game this far. Other people
it's like a piece of art, yeah.
Exactly. And in fact, I intended to give an entire panel talk on how a tool-assisted speedrun is art, but my panel talk ended up being a lot more about failure, but that's and persisting past failure. But it really, there's a lot of truth there, though. It is art in the sense that you're an artist who has your canvas is the video game, and your tools are the ability to back up at any time you make a mistake. If you don't like how something looks, if you don't like how it feels, at any point you can throw away what you've done and return to an earlier state where you were happy. And maybe you were at the beginning of the level and you're ready to jump over that piranha plant or stomp on that Goomba. And you can take another attempt at it. And additional tools that allow you to do that, not only in just slow motion, like what was possible in 2003 when Morimoto did his Super Mario Bros. 3 Time Attack run, but also frame advance that allows you to not just play it in slow motion, but play it one frame at a time. So you decide when you want to move forward. You can take as much time as you like to analyze what's going on screen, to decide what trajectory you're going to take. And at any point where you are satisfied with that segment, you can make a new save state and start again from there. And just iteratively improve all the way through the game from the beginning to the end. And sometimes you find improvements to earlier sections and you have to toss all your work out and redo it, but you have the tools to do that. And every time you're going through that process of loading up a previous state of the game and starting over, we call that a re-record. It's a mark of something that has had a lot
in the end, it's spliced all together, whatever your preference, or not preference, I'm sorry, whatever you would say is the preferred route that you've decided from each little tick back.
And at the end, you might have a large number of re-records. Re-recording being every time you loaded a state, it might be tens of thousands, in some cases even 500,000 or more.
Yeah.
So it's a mark of how many times in my opinion, an artist chiseled away at their tool-assisted speedrun to make the art that they were able to come up with. And I describe it as art because you have artistic choice. You could stand on the moving platform in the auto-scroller and do nothing. Or you could jump around in ridiculous ways that are completely unsafe and showboat.
Yeah.
So that's where the artist aspect comes in. You have the choice of how you want to display what control you have. And there's all kinds of ways that this exemplifies, but I really consider it a canvas in that way. And yeah, long and the short of it, go ahead.
I was going to say, I agree 100%, because one of the biggest things that I enjoy when watching TASs, and I look them up occasionally, if I am bored, which is more often than not, and I'm doing a job where I don't need my full attention in front of me, I can pull out my phone and pull on YouTube. And one of the fun things that I notice is I'll notice a couple of TASs where it's maybe a game I'm not too familiar with, but to see something that just looks really interesting, and then go back and watch a real person play it and say, well, hold on, man, the programmed one was being completely crazy. Or my personal favorite is to find ones where they have games that if you are able to have an input every frame, you break the game. And I think a really strange example of that was with Wii Bowling. Somebody did a TAS of Wii Bowling. And I don't know if it was a beta version of the game or what, but because they had the ability to choose what input to do every frame, the ball could literally hit the pins, but then come back and go after the other pin that it missed. And I'm thinking, this is totally crazy, but it's hilarious. And nobody is, going to be competitive and worry about, oh, you got the TAS on Wii Bowling. No, it's hilarious. It's a piece of art. And I remember showing it to my friends, and we were laughing like crazy. And I'm turning to him and saying, I have no idea what to say to this other than I want to show this to somebody who does not even know what a TAS is, and just watch them look at it in horror before revealing, that this is a piece of art that somebody spent tons and tons of time to make this comedic display from frame-by-frame programming.
I love it. This is my favorite thing, is when I hear someone else who has witnessed a tool-assisted speedrun and has found the joy of watching ridiculous things happen. And really, that's where things get interesting and lead off into another path. Hi, I have another hat. I find glitches and exploit them.
Ah.
So
that's a very nice hat to wear.
Yes. By day, I am a senior security analyst at Bishop Fox. I am, in fact, employed in the business of breaking things. It is a wonderful job. People pay me to do this. It's awesome. So, and my path through doing the stuff with TaskSpot has led to a point where I was able to get this job, which was awesome. So yeah, there you go. Hacking video games led me to the ability to hack websites. Great. So finding glitches in video games is not necessarily easy. And there are some people who are more skilled at glitch hunting than others. In fact, there are many people who are very skilled at finding glitches in video games that put me to shame. Master June in particular is a fantastic glitch hunter. He's able to find the most ridiculous things where, if you do this in this way, it fills up all the object attribute map spots in Super Mario World, and then whatever Yoshi's tongue touches causes this to happen, which ultimately allows you to execute the object attribute map information as code, and then you can do this thing. Like, there's all this ridiculous stuff.
Right. I think I saw the thing where they basically made a fake Mario Maker using Super Mario World through TAS.
That was
us. Like, yeah, and it was crazy because you're looking at it and you're saying, what in the world? How did they do this? And it's because you get glitch hunters like that who can go and find, oh, wait, this allows us to be completely ridiculous. Let's do it.
Yeah. Now, it's one thing to find a glitch and to take over a game in an emulator. It's another thing entirely to do that while on the real hardware. And that's where things get really interesting. Not really sure how to segue that.
We'll do a cut. We'll do a transition. I'll do a cool little red-green style duct tape across the screen, and it'll go into the next one. No, but anyway, yeah. So you're saying that finding these and making them work on hardware is key because they actually have to run on the real hardware for them to be viable.
That's right, and that requires something called determinism, which you've probably heard that word before, but it matters a whole lot to us. If you think about the consequences of playing back I'll phrase it this way. If you go all the way back to the 1800s, 1900s with a player piano, and you had a piano roll, a long scroll of paper with holes in it that would play a predefined sequence of notes to play a song, and you feed that through your player piano, and start playing it. Everything is going to play in order as long as that scroll of paper just keeps going through the piano at the same speed. Everything's going to be fine. But what happens if you have a paper jam? It might still be spinning, but whatever's coming out the other side is not the original composition.
No.
And that's kind of the challenge we have, is we need the game to behave the same way the entire time. And the only way that happens is through true, full deterministic behavior. Now, that's possible on an original consoles like the NES, the SNES, a lot of these consoles that have the ability to be very consistent. And there's one specific thing that makes them that way. It's that the only source of actual randomness comes from the player.
Right.
So think of it this way. An original Nintendo did not have a clock in it at all. It had no way to know what time it was. When you turned it on, it was whatever state it was in when you turned it on. So there was no source of entropy and nothing to sample for randomness. So instead, they use a pseudo-random number generator, where they take player input, maybe the number of frames that have elapsed since you turned on the console, do some math, and pop out the other end a random number. And it works very well. It appears very random. If you go watch Mitch Flowerpower, again referencing Super Mario Bros. 3, he has no control over the Hammer Brothers. They move all over the place and troll him like crazy. In a TAS, however, because the only source of randomness, the only source of entropy that's seeding the random number generator is player input, what you get if you always give it the exact same sequence of button presses is the exact same outcome of the RNG sequence. So you have control over ensuring that it's a deterministic output or outcome.
Yeah, the Hammer Bros will be in this exact spot at this exact time if I've made sure that everything I've done prior to this point is all this arbitrary, frame, code, everything.
Right, and this is one of the reasons that it is never fair to compare a tool-assisted speedrun to human play. Even in cases where they might only be apart by 1 second, it's just not fair because there's randomness that you cannot control as a human.
No. And you're not advocating for them to compare them as such. I definitely see them in two different lights. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that people who use them as a measure to cheat would be, that's shameful. But people who use it as an art form, that's completely respectful.
And on the other hand, one of the things that has happened in recent years, partly because of the advocacy I've put in place myself and partly because of other people who are far better at this kind of stuff than I am, we've seen some synergistic things happening between the real-time runners and the tool-assisted speedrun community. And the primary thing that we see happening is the real-time community will start playing a game, and just by playing it as a human, they will route it naturally. They will figure out the fastest path through the game. Many games have non-linearity, where you have a choice of how you want to go through a specific game, or which levels you might want to play in Super Mario Bros. 3, or even in a linear game, what path you might want to take through a map. So there's these routing choices of what's the right way to go. And then a tool-assisted speedrun will be made by someone in that community that takes that route and explores what you can do when you have perfection, when you have the ability to back up and try it again. And they might alter the route. They might try things that a human could do but didn't think of. They might use the ability to use tools to find a glitch that, although it was discovered with tools, might actually be possible by the real-time community. So those glitches feed back in, the real-time run feeds back in, or the task run feeds back into the real-time run, and ultimately what you end up with is this feedback loop where new routing goes into the task techniques and discoveries go into the real-time community, and it's just wonderful.
Task comes sort of a research and development team for the real-time runners, because they can look at a situation and say, oh, well, he did this. I could probably do that in a non-frame perfect way, or maybe even a frame perfect way, even if I don't have the exact dexterity that a robot does.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really clever. Yeah. Well, then, I this is not any form of flattery, but thank you for that, honestly, and thank for the whole community that's behind this, that's pushing this as a very positive thing, because with it having, I guess, such a rough start, being seen as a tool for cheating and people using it for shameful claims to fame, I can see how that's got to put a bad taste in the mouth for a lot of veteran runners, where they kind of see it and they say, yeah, good could be done with it, but a lot of people ruined it, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, jumping aside from that is fantastic, though, because, like I said, oh man, I was just thinking back. I watched a TAS of Super Mario Sunshine with my brother.
Oh, yeah.
And my older
Such
brother
a
played
great
the
game.
game all the way through legitimately, you know, I wouldn't lie if it took him a couple of months, you know, to beat that game legitimately, because he wanted to do everything in it, and he loved it, loved the GameCube. And so I show him this TAS of Super Mario Sunshine, and, you know, he's spinning around everywhere, jumping on things. There's bosses where he's inside the boss, you know, while it's in its down frames, and then hops out. And it's just this ridiculous, hilarious stuff.
Oh, yeah,
And
it is fun.
it is amazing because you can see, at least from what I noticed, like what you just said, in that task, there are things that I saw in it that either A, came from real-time runners, you know, knowing the most optimal route, or vice versa. Maybe it was implemented in a task, and then the runners could say, okay, that route is optimal. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to jump inside Petey Piranha, you know, and be inside of his stomach on frames that we can't normally be there. But we can use these techniques of, okay, we wall jump at this exact point, and we hop over this way, and it gets us there quicker.
Exactly. Yeah, it's amazing. I love the entertainment value, and it's especially fun when it's a game that you have a lot of nostalgia for. When it's a game that you remember playing, yeah, that's the best right there.
I hopped in. I believe it was either I was watching it on YouTube, or I can't remember if I was actually watching one of your streams, and it was Mario Kart 64. And that's a game that I played to no end. And I am not joking when I say that. And it's funny, my reason for getting it was I actually played it on an N64 for a very, very short period of time. My siblings never let me touch their consoles. But when I finally got a Nintendo Wii, you know, years later, I got the Virtual Console version of that game. And I kept trying to do exploits and say, okay, well, how can I beat these levels? They're really hard for me because, you know, I'm just not good at games like this. And I'm watching your stream of these different tasks that people have created for Mario Kart 64, and, you know, showing off different speedrun tactics, and then just showing off just exploits that are insane. And I'm thinking, I would have never, ever imagined that to be possible.
Yeah, it's just incredible sometimes.
But aside from the task work, what and I guess in sense you said you work as a, for lack of a better term, kind of a glitch and exploit hunter for what?
My official title is Senior Security Analyst for Bishop Fox, but you could consider me a white hat, red team penetration tester. I know, lots of colors, but it basically, clients hire us to verify that their infrastructure is, or to kind of assess the security posture of their external perimeter, internal perimeter, their application security, things like that. And it's an amazing situation because I get to do things with permission. Whereas some of the things I do on stage at a Games Done Quick event, and there's a whole other conversation we should have about that, some of the stuff I do is not necessarily appreciated.
But at Bishop Fox, you can find yourself, you're pretty much the guy with a sledgehammer, and they say, okay, we'll go smash the wall, and if you manage to make a hole, tell us, you know?
Yeah, pretty much. So there's legitimacy in the work I do during the day. There is some concern about the work we do for charity. So again, I'll kind of get into the Games Done Quick stuff in a bit, but if you think about it from a risk perspective, it's one thing to break into a video game made in the 1980s. It's entirely different to find a potential angle of attack that could result in leaderboards in a current game being compromised if what you do is released.
Yeah.
That's a very, very different scenario and kind of scary.
I could see how it would create a huge upset in the community because you have these people who are, it's almost become their livelihood. They're
in some cases it is their livelihood.
Yeah, and I definitely am not going to be anybody who disses that kind of lifestyle, but you have these people who focus so much on this so that if something like that does come out, it is a risk to their, I don't know, I guess their everything at that point. if most of their wealth is coming from them doing these speed runs and doing these real-time things.
Right, exactly.
Well, I worked in physical security, which is a completely different thing altogether.
I'm sorry for you.
Well, I'm sorry for myself too, but you don't get anywhere from feeling sorry for yourself, especially if you're sitting there doing security.
Yeah.
But I did end up doing security for a while, and it was funny because there was a point where they did ask us. They said, what are some flaws? What are some things you've noticed in maybe the way we're running these systems? I did security for a warehouse for the Dallas Cowboys. And before anybody, calls me on whistleblowing or anything, when you have people who come from places where they love the team that they're going into, they are going to be a little tempted to steal things from a warehouse. And so our whole job was to make sure that didn't happen. And I'm not trying to create some, out of my butt parallel between what you and I do, but in the sense of that, when I was doing that, when I was working that, I can definitely see the importance of understanding a system, understanding how something works to the point where you yourself could be the criminal. I mean, this is me legitimately speaking. If I wanted to, there's a lot of stuff I could have taken. There's a lot of stuff I could have gotten away with scot-free. But because I knew that, and I used it more towards building up the security rather than tearing it down, or in some places, let's talk about in the speedrun aspect, basically nullifying somebody else's skills or putting them in a poor position because of this information. You use it for good. You know when to release stuff. You know when to inform people. And most importantly, you're not a jerk about it.
Yeah, one of the most extraordinary risks we've had in all of the events we've ever done, really, was recently at AGDQ 2020 when we released, well, we didn't release the source code for, but we released a video demonstrating that we had the ability to do a tool-assisted speedrun on Super Mario Maker 2, which has active leaderboards on the Switch. And
yes,
that was a concern, right? Because if the tools we developed were abused, illegitimate records could be posted on the leaderboards, which would destroy the running. They call them the ninja levels, and they're levels designed for speedrunning. We were really concerned that if we got out there, that bad actors would make it impossible for a real human to hold the record.
Well, more importantly, I think that would create some serious backlash. And sorry, not more importantly. With I think just as much importance, it would once again put a bad light, the bad apple that spoiled the bunch. It would say, well, people are using this for bad. I think even Nintendo might look at it and say, look, this is a serious problem. Because Nintendo themselves is the one that implemented the system.
There are two possible outcomes. The first is that Nintendo both notices and comes after us for doing it, which would be a lot of trouble. That would be very bad. If we legally had a challenge from Nintendo, that would be a pretty dangerous scenario, and I've got a specific mitigation strategy around that I'll tell you about in a second. And the other thing that we're more worried about, honestly, is Nintendo not noticing. And I know that sounds silly, but it's also not unrealistic because Nintendo has in the past not noticed some things. And that would be worse. If Nintendo didn't take action and the leaderboards got destroyed, now it's the community that we want to feed into and support in the real-time running community. It's that community that suffers, not us.
Yeah, and they're going to turn back on you because it's something that's just witnessed as, well, you gave something to the wrong hands. Whether or not you actually did.
Exactly. As Grand Pooh Bear put it, who is a well-known Super Mario Maker 2 runner, he phrased it as, it's bittersweet. Knowing that it's possible is incredible, but seeing it actually happen is terrifying.
Yeah.
So the other aspect that I alluded to earlier is we could very easily irritate Nintendo to the point that they sued us. And that became a real concern a couple of years ago when we started realizing, we just found a zero-day exploit in a game for the GameCube. Now, who cares about a brand new exploit in a 17-year-old game console? But still, that's starting to flirt with fire when you're on stage in front of 250,000 people at a charity event and you're showing off a brand new glitch that's never been disclosed. That's a lot different. Normally, there's responsible disclosure rules to say, hey, company, this is the flaw we found. You need to patch this before we tell anybody. And then you wait a reasonable amount of time, they patch it, and then you tell everyone, hey, this flaw exists, go update your stuff. That's a typical way. But you can't do that with a console. You're talking about a CD. It's not like you can update it. So
no.
It's a little different scenario. But at the same time, there's this risk, right? How do you walk that tightrope? And what happens if you poke the wrong bear? And one of the things we realized is that if we keep doing this long enough, it's not a matter of if someone will sue us, it's a matter of when. And out of that, I started a social benefit company called TaskBot L3C to both hold TaskBot's assets in the event that I pass away in particular, so that those assets go to the community, but also to have that as our shield in case there is a lawsuit. In other words, so that the lawsuit targets the company and not us as individuals. We're doing these events under the guise of that entity, in part as a mechanism to help protect us in case we are sued.
It's kind of scary that y'all have to set that up. It is very good that y'all have those buffers in place and you have those plans set up, but it is kind of daunting to think that there is a chance that you will end up at one point poking the wrong bear, and you'll end up in a place where you have to fork out something. I can't say that doesn't make sense, because it perfectly does, but it's upsetting.
It is, but on the other hand, we're doing everything we can above reproach. And I say that not just as lip service. I mean it in the sense that if we're showing something on stage, I have the original cartridge there in my hand on stage with me. I'm not using hacked or pirated equipment. I'm not using anything that was illegally obtained. Everything we're doing is appropriate reverse engineering practices using clean room reverse engineering methods. We're doing everything as legitimately as we possibly can. And this is important to me because I'm the one up on stage presenting. So it matters to me to be above reproach.
You're the one with the big target on your shirt if anything goes wrong.
Yeah, and most people aren't in that situation. You can go to a DEF CON talk that is off the record, or an entire series of talks. In fact, the Sky Talks are often completely off the record. No devices allowed. If you're caught with a device recording a talk, they will escort you out, and you are probably blacklisted. I can tell you that people that are in those rooms giving those types of talks are talking about the most interesting stuff. And they're in there because they're afraid that there is going to be either legal or criminal action against them. And I know that second part sounds even more far-fetched, but I might be violating the Digital Millennium Copyright Act without realizing it. Or maybe the only way to do what we want to do is to deliberately violate it because, oh look, this technically is encryption, even if it's completely broken and lame, but it's technically encryption and therefore invokes the DMCA, which gives the legal precedent to go after us for that. So there's scary parts to this.
Oh, definitely. It's a slippery slope. And to me, that's crazy because as an individual who, and I'm not deterred by that, and not to make it sound like I am into anything criminal, I'm not deterred by the sense of that, but with you in the position that you were in, you do have to be aware of all the possibilities. You do have to be aware that, oh, this could actually be doing something that seems crazy or is going against some kind of DMC role. Gosh, it's just so strange to think that something is simple. And of course, when we're dealing back with original Nintendo stuff, I'm assuring there's a lot more leniency, there's a lot less worry. But when you're dealing with the Switch, when you're dealing with stuff that people are finding even for Wii U, or, well, to push off even not Nintendo, Xbox One, PS4, there are games that have been out for those that are exclusive to those that people at this point have discovered how to make TASs for. And you got to think, well, in what way are they doing it? Is it okay to show this off? Is it okay to even bring this up? Because the way that this product could have been made could have most likely been through illegal means.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many different angles we could talk about for quite a while, actually. There's a lot of different aspects of this. I can tell you one thing, though. If anyone does sue us, the optics aren't great. We're on stage raising money at Games Done Quick charity events. And just to kind of talk about that, because I haven't actually delved into that subject, if you'll allow me a little bit of a digression.
Go right ahead.
And kind of moving on from this topic a little bit. a Games Done Quick charity event is a thing to behold. They started back in 2010. This is the 10th year anniversary of Games Done Quick. And it's one person after another playing a video game that they love, or maybe don't love, or at least have played a lot, playing that one after another as fast as I can in front of a live streaming audience, raising money for various different charities like the Prevent Cancer Foundation and Doctors Without Borders. And I'm the only one there that has this other aspect of doing tool-assisted speedruns. Although there have been other folks who have done it, but for the most part, the task content that I organize and help present is the only tool-assisted speedrun content that's at these events. So everyone else is using their own human ability. This one narrow thing is using tools to assist humans in creative ways. And it's become fairly well known as being one of the most interesting parts of Games Done Quick. To the point now that
you talk to anybody who's watching it, intermittently, they're making time for that task block. If they don't have a specific game they're looking forward to, it's usually the task block.
Yeah. So it's been interesting seeing how that has developed, and it's also been a huge responsibility. I'll phrase it this way. I did not expect to be here, nor was it something I actively pursued. I did not go out and say, I'm the only one that's going to present anything at a Games Done Quick, or even remotely plan on it being that way. And in fact, I'm actively trying to undo being placed in the position of being benevolent dictator for life. If you've ever heard of the phrase BDFL, sometimes associated with people like Linus Torvalds of the Linux kernel, or a couple other influential figures of particular programming languages like Guido Van Rossum from Python. You hear these names, but it's really awkward and odd when it actually happens to you. So basically, a couple of years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, around 2016, we had a few events under our belt, and I said, hey, does someone else want to go to an event to represent the test videos community? As I mentioned, I'm on staff as an ambassador of that community, and so it made sense for me to be the person that was there on stage. It was just normal for me to be there. But the question was, does anyone else want to do this? And there was crickets. Like, no one wanted to get in front of the camera.
Oh gosh.
So
that's daunting.
Well, and that's where things are kind of interesting, because let's be honest, I am a human being. I have skills and I have substantial disadvantages. And I'm not actually that good at many things. I cannot do real in-depth programming of a Super Nintendo. I don't know the 6500 assembly well enough to pull that off. I am not good at board layouts. I'm not the best person to go to send it tracing out a new replay device board. I'm not the guy you want writing firmware. I'm not the guy you want writing the communications platform. I'm not necessarily even the fastest or the best at making tool-assisted speedruns. There are so many other subject matter experts that are much better than me at all these things. Even when it comes to things like the artwork, that maybe we make some custom art sprite that we are injecting into a game. I'm not the best pixel artist. I'm definitely not the best composer. We've had some where we made our own music. So there's all of these different things that I'm not good at. The only thing I would say that I'm halfway decent at is I can get in front of a camera with 250,000 people and not have an elevated heart rate. It's not necessarily the greatest skill in the world, but I can do it. So
well, and if I may interject and say something, and I understand you're getting to a point with what you're saying. I am not at all trying to call you out on this, but don't belittle your abilities. Don't do that, because one thing that is very interesting as a director, which is pretty much the position you're holding right now, being the head of this whole thing, as a director, that charismatic aspect, at least the part of being able to stay calm and collected and look at a group of people and tell them what needs to be said, even if you are a little nervous or even if the words take a little to get out, that is the most important aspect. And I think that's probably what's so daunting for everybody else, even if they are better composers, even if they are better pixel artists and speedrunners and task creators. They're looking at it and saying, well, you're up on a pedestal there, bud, and I don't know if I want to climb up there, because then I'm going to have to look down and see all these other people that I'm working with. And I don't say that as a negative thing. I don't say that to continue to deter anybody. I hope that brings people, up to light and say that, hey, maybe that's something that I can start to learn and start to go into that position with. But as a director myself, I understand that sometimes when you're the only one who is showing any kind of charisma to go into a situation and deal with the people, it's like, all right, well, this is just it. It's just me. There's a ton of other people I'd like to thank, but they didn't want to come today, so I'll just have to say their names. You know?
Yeah, and it's really interesting how this developed. I didn't mean for things to happen the way they are, where now I'm the main guy, the main organizer, and the main face of presentation. And I am doing things to try to mitigate that, in the sense that I want to make sure, first of all, if I pass away unexpectedly, that the community doesn't falter. But second, that I don't become so powerful that nothing else can get done. In fact, I'm instituting a committee method of content selection, in part so that it's not just me arbitrarily being a dictator saying this is what we're doing. Because I might not be the right...
democracy. You can't have taskbot gulags, you know? You gotta have democracy.
There's a lot to be said about that. I don't rule with an iron fist, and I think anyone
No,
who
not at all.
had that impression is sorely misinformed. I have been accused of being quote-unquote pink. The discord.task.bot server that we have, the Discord server we have for the taskbot community, is one of the friendliest and most awesome places I've ever been a part of. And it's interesting because we do have some things that could be considered slightly draconian. We really keep language off of the server. We make it kid-friendly. We make it so that it's generally PG in nature. You can hop on there and have it in front of your kids, and it's okay. And that subtle change alters everything, because people are friendlier to one another. They're not using foul language. It's a much more pleasant environment to be in. And while it's kind of strange from other communities that are just rife with cussing and a lot of memes and other fun things that tend to get a little into the more lewd category, it makes the environment much nicer. And I didn't set out to deliberately make that happen, but that is where we're at. And so I've been accused of being pink. I actually had someone storm out of the server going, "You want me to use good language? Why would I want to do that? I want to be completely uncensored and rude." And they left the server. So I got accused.
Are you paraphrasing, or was that actually what, like, legitimately they were just like, "Oh, I want to be this way, so I'm going to leave"?
I'm paraphrasing. They used much more colorful language.
Oh, of course. And I wouldn't want you to use that language here. But
well, that's... Yeah. And I'm kind of... You know, after all these years, you'd think I'd be quote-unquote used to it. But, man, it's not always easy to deal with the really negative comments, especially on YouTube. Oh, yeah. What we do is we take the content we make, either while I'm recording content on my Twitch channel or content we've had at various different events. We put it on the YouTube channel, and people say the most awful things. I've been told to kill myself through the use of a hot curling iron through internal injury.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, it gets graphic. It's really specific sometimes. I've been told that I'm narcissistic, and I had to ask my community, am I narcissistic? And the response was, if you have to ask, you're not. Or if you bothered to ask, if you are, you're not. I've been accused of being a cheater in many ways and in many different languages. I've been told that it's boring, or that I'm a terrible presenter, or that I need to stop talking. I've been told that no one wants to see my tasks crap, and there's just so many different negative things. And Reddit can be just as caustic. There are people out there that really would like me to just go away and never come back. And that's okay. Some people are not interested in seeing tool-assisted speedruns. That's all right. I don't appreciate the death threats, but I get that people have different tastes. So there's that. But one of the things that's probably the most interesting about ending up in this position, I didn't set out to be, as you called it, a director. I consider myself almost like a conductor, but I am the lead face. I am the main guy in general in charge of this whole thing. And that's a really interesting position when everyone you're working with is volunteers, and they can choose to suddenly not deliver at any time. So, leading volunteers is a whole other thing. And I'm the one that takes the blame when something we present doesn't go well.
when it comes to situations like that, it is horrendous because, yeah, you do have to be the one. If you're conductor or director or whatever terminology it is, you're the head, you're the face, and somebody else doesn't pull their weight. Well, maybe you were almost fully dependent on them pulling their weight because they had a skill that you don't have.
We've had cases where we were still fixing code because a volunteer did not stick to the time schedule that we demanded of them. And we were still fixing code 15 minutes before we were supposed to be on stage. That's not supposed to happen.
Oh, gosh, no, it's not. And that's upsetting. I've had a lot of situations where I've worked with people that have gone MIA.
It happens. Now, there's another flip. There's a flip side to this that's actually more problematic. It might sound like me taking the brunt of all the negativity is the biggest problem. That really isn't the issue. The biggest problem is when things go well. Mm-hmm. And the actual volunteers and the actual artists and the actual authors and the creative people who put their heart and effort into making something don't get the attribution they deserve. That specifically happens when I'm the main face up on stage showing someone else's tool-assisted speedrun, and they don't get proper attribution, either because their name didn't fit on screen, and so the tech at the booth of whatever event I happen to be at just doesn't get the name right or doesn't put it in at all. All these different types of scenarios have happened in the past. Attribution to me is ridiculously important because there's no way we would have the content we're able to show without the hours, months, years of effort that oftentimes goes into making a tool-assisted speedrun. And years is not an exaggeration. So trying to make sure it's not. Exactly. Trying to make sure that the effort that those people put in is properly highlighted and that they get attribution that they deserve is actually a big deal to me. It's one of the things that is really important in figuring out how do we expose this. Can we make sure we have the category name? So now we're doing quality checks ahead of time, working with the tech guys. Hey, what does the name look like for this author? Okay, you put it in as the category name. Blah any % by this person, or this person's any % run of this game, whatever works best in formatting. I make sure I say it out loud in stream. I tell people where to go to find more information because we need to make sure that people understand the disclaimer that this was made with tools. I still have people who come in and don't understand that. It's kind of hilarious. So all this stuff is really important to say. And yeah, kind of circling back to the earlier topic, there's a lot of things I'm not good at, but I'm here, and I don't want to leave. I love it here. I love having this community. I love what we're able to do for charity. Ultimately, the biggest payoff and the reason I keep doing this out of my own pocket is the charity aspects, which we should probably talk about at some point.
Oh yeah, well then let's hop right into that.
Well, the first year that we did this was AGDQ 2014. Mm-hmm. So in 2013, we started developing a replay device that in the community was, the original one was made by True. We've since moved on to other boards made by other people with more capabilities or different goals. But that first year, we just had this one circuit board that we built because we found our Raspberry Pi wasn't fast enough to do what we needed. We needed a custom board. So we built that, and just having this blank circuit board in a shoebox that had been exemplified in earlier examples of task content at Games Done Quick events in 2011 didn't seem appropriate. Like, you wanted a player playing the game. So I solicited ideas for what kind of mascot we could have. I believe it was Adelicat, who is the main lead of Task Videos, who suggested using a Rob Robot as a base. So then I combined the Rob Robot and the Raspberry Pi we were using to drive this replay device that True built. I threw it all together with some zip ties, and I called it Rodberry Pi. And needless to say, Mecha Richter saw the device and saw what we were trying to do in a forum post and responded, "I'm loving me this Taskbot action," or something along those lines. So Mecha Richter was the first known person to call him Taskbot, and the name has stuck ever since. And trust me, I'm very happy about that name. It is so much better than saying Rodberry Pi.
Right.
Like, what was I
as
thinking?
funny as it is, it doesn't roll off the tongue when it comes to the whole situation of, this is a tool assisted speedrun machine.
And here's where things really got interesting. It was that personification of a person, which in Japan is already kind of a thing. They had a specific character, a made-up character called Mr. Tass. and he was really good at games, and they would praise Mr. Task for how good he is at playing video. Of course, if it's a tool-assisted speedrun, and it's just a personification of that. But that same concept accidentally happening. I didn't go out specifically to make TaskBot the way he is now. I went out to say, hey, we need a mascot for people to call him something. What I didn't realize that was by doing that, it would make him much more important and much more memorizable and much more of a brand than if I had called him something else or if I hadn't made certain choices, right? That I couldn't have predicted in 2013 that it would become what it is today. And what it is today, it blows my mind, because we, at AGDQ 2020, I believe it was our 12th or 13th Games Done Quick event we appeared at, we were given a block of time, and one of our runs was a bonus game. And in order to see the bonus game, the donation incentive had to be met. And they set the donation incentive to $175,000. I did not expect that at all. I certainly did not anticipate them setting it that high. And at the end of the day, it made $179,000. People paid that much money to see that run. We've helped raise over $900,000 for various charities over the last 6 years, and I never could have predicted that.
That is amazing. That is genuinely amazing. I look at it as something where it is the entertainment aspect of it. Now, the people behind the scenes, they understand the technology of it. They understand, the art that goes into it. But I think it's the same relationship that you can have with any piece of media. You can have somebody who watches it and enjoys it because it's fun, because it's fast, because it's funny. It's the same reason why anybody who doesn't know how to make a movie can go sit and watch Star Wars, But the fact that it's going towards such a good cause, and that people are not only willing to watch it, they are willing to help other people. They are willing to throw their names into the ring. They're willing to be nice, on a Discord. They're willing to help in so many different aspects. That's what really makes it a community,
Mm-hmm. Very true. Very, very true.
I definitely am more on the side of kind of the viewer, and I pop in every once in a while and try and support it where I can, watching it on stream or looking at it from, showing it to different people, introducing it to other individuals. But it amazes me still when I look at all these people who do put all their effort in. And it does tie back to what you were saying, it really is upsetting when the proper people aren't able to get credited, because how much work they put into it. And the fact that there is a desire to watch it. There is hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of desire to watch it. And you need to make sure, that the people who are behind it are getting the credit. So I can understand how that's just a little frustrating, a little more so than frustrating, when it's just not, it doesn't flow as well as you would like to when it comes to crediting them.
We've gotten much better at it over the years.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know for one, you always make sure to say, who's done, who is credited on something. You give names, you introduce the people you're working with, and that's always the first step. It's just, hopefully the people take the initiative, the people who are watching, who do want to get involved, go in and find those people. Now, obviously not in a weird sense of like, I'm going to find you, but locate where they're coming from, what they've worked on, and really, really just boost the community.
Yeah, absolutely. So the community has really grown in ways I never could have expected. And a lot of it comes down to, it's a different community that's interested in TaskBot than is interested in Task Videos. It used to be that all of our organization for these events happened on the Task Videos forums, and at this point, almost all of it just happens on the discord.task.bot Discord server. And it's to the point now there's 2.5 thousand people, 2,500 people in that server already. It's kind of mind-boggling. We get new people all the time that are interested in a slightly different angle than what Task Videos provides. I'm still on staff with Task Videos, and I still represent them and their content, and do so appropriately, but the actual event content planning typically involves things that are outside of the context of what tool-assisted videos would normally be. Like the Super Mario Maker 2, we were showing off a task, but it was not a task that could be submitted at Task Videos. So Task Videos had no way to represent that content. So we're trying to figure out how to handle that kind of stuff.
Well, and I'm assuming, as more people throw their hat in the ring and help out with that, you can meet agreements. You can come to different terms where people will be able to. I'm not going to say more accepting, because it seems like the community is pretty accepting. It's just the individuals who are bridging the gaps, like you. People who can meet you in the middle with that and say, well, where can we display this stuff, and what rules can be completely set up in stone, so exactly what to display, when to display it, and where. And if those rules are broken by anybody else, it's outside of you and disconnected from you.
Right, exactly.
Okay, well, if you don't mind, I think we'll start kind of wrapping up here, but I do have some questions for you, the man behind the bot, the keeper himself. And
I have answers. Let's see if they match.
As great as Tabletbot is, we need to learn about you. So, when it comes to music, do you have a favorite genre of music?
Chiptune, of course.
Oh, perfect. See, you're now. You sure you're not making yourself a little too biased because you're having to take care of that little taskbot? You genuinely enjoy it?
I do enjoy chiptune music. I listen to a wide variety of music, but I would say the two genres I like the most are a cappella, a la Pentatonics, folks like Peter Hollins, the wonderful... there's some amazing groups out there. Brian Hull does some a cappella work. Just some amazing artists on YouTube that blow my mind with their ability. And I like chiptune. I like the sound of that. I like the Commodore 64 synth sound, and the SID chip is just amazing. There's a lot of fun to be had there. I would love to be able to compose it personally, but I can't.
Yeah, well, and admiring it's half the fun, but yeah, I feel you there. You look at things and you're like, oh, I wish I could do that. Well,
so we have our own remix of video game. We have radio.toss.bot. You're welcome to tune into that. It is an IceCast station.
Ooh, well, that's good. I'll make sure I'll get that on myself as well. And those are, and that's comprised of what, just more chiptune stuff or stuff made by specific individuals?
Remixes, a lot of it comes from, it's all mostly OC remix material that we've culled and pulled out stuff that's more rap oriented or is foul language. We've pulled that out of the lineup. Yeah. And the goal is that we're trying to get to a point of having it be PG, but sometimes we still have some songs that sneak through, but we have a pretty good mix of OC remix content, and it's just fun. I often play it through a Super Nintendo. Which
that's good then.
Which is bizarre. So, context.
Well, no,
I do a lot of streams.
To think about that. Yeah.
I do a lot of streams on Twitch, and my method of playing music is absurd and exemplifies everything that you would expect to see. We never do anything the easy way. We always do it like, how can we do this a stupid way? This is definitely up there.
It's not the easy way, it's the fun way.
Oh, it's fun, all right. So I start my streams by playing the game Super Mario World on a original unmodified Super Nintendo console, and about 45 seconds in, everything glitches out, and suddenly it shows a different screen that says, "Welcome to Total's SNES audio player or music player." And it at that point, we start sending a massive onslaught of button presses to the controller ports at a rate of about, a total data rate of about 1.5 megabits. And we're playing, we send all of that into the console, send it to the audio processing unit, the APU on the SNES hardware, and it produces 16-bit, 32 kilohertz stereo audio, which we then sample out the multi-out port and send back into the soundboard. And that's where my music comes from. When you're listening to my stream, and I have music playing, it's coming through a Super Nintendo, being shoved through the controller ports.
That is crazy. But it's more interesting to think that the technology is able to be used in such a way, but I think it's just even more humorous that that's the way that's the lead in. That's just the showcase of this is the ridiculousness you will come to expect from the show.
The hilarious thing is we don't even tell people that we're doing it. If you hop in the stream midstream, you definitely aren't going to know that. In fact, most of the time I don't even bother to show it on stream anymore. I do it before I even start streaming, and so people are listening to music without even realizing that this is happening behind the scenes.
Right. Yeah. On a device that they were messing around with Final Fantasy with a couple of days ago,
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, you mentioned something about YouTubers that you like to watch. Are there any YouTubers in specific that you kind of follow? And obviously, I know you're not completely full with the ability to just go and watch whatever YouTubers you want. But are there maybe some groups that you kind of stick with and try and catch up with occasionally?
Touching on the subtopic you brought up briefly, time is my most precious aspect of my life. Time is the most precious asset I have. I don't have enough time. I have enough friends. I could always use more, but I have everything else I could need. I am about $15,000 in the hole from attending the charity events myself and paying for my own flights. We don't get paid to do this, so I'm paying my own money to get to a Games Done Quick event or get to an ESA in Europe. And those travel costs, the equipment costs that I need to do the things I'm doing add up, and I'm paying it out of my own pocket. It's getting better. I got to a point where I was only about $12K in the hole, and then I bought more stuff. Yeah, it is what it is. Not like I'm being ridiculous with my money. I'm being very careful with it, but it's expensive. So it's definitely a thing. But it's not money that I lack the most. It's time. So I have minimal time to invest in anything, let alone YouTube. But when I do watch YouTube, I watch educational content, because if I'm going to use my time, I'm going to use it wisely. I love me Half as Interesting, Windover Productions, Tom Scott, Smarter Every Day, Kyrgyzstan. I like other fun things. Defunctland. Defunctland is a podcast talking about the history of theme parks and theme park attractions.
They did a documentary on Jim Henson recently, and I watched that thing.
Yes, and they've been doing those too.
Oh man,
there's some wonderful history that's there. If I'm going to watch something, I want it to be educational, unless I'm going for the music angle, in which case I listen to one of my favorites, which is Melinda Kathleen Reese and her Translator Fails. They're silly, they're fun, highly recommended. Lindsey Sterling, Brian Hull, folks like I mentioned earlier, Peter Hollins and Pentatonics, that kind of stuff. So that's my YouTube lineup. You can
devote your time to other things while you're listening to that too. So that's kind of a
usually
double
dishes.
benefit there. Yeah. Well,
usually the kids will be on the couch, or they'll be doing dishes, and I'm on the couch folding laundry or something. We got to do something.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to, and I understand, like you said, time is your strongest asset, but you do take some time away from your work. Is there anything you do kind of as a hobby or a relaxing thing?
I wish I had time for that.
Man.
I do manage to make time. One of the interesting things when you start doing these types of big projects is you start to discover what's actually important in life. And as the charity work that I was working on started to come to a point where it was a lot more than just one event a year, when it started becoming, okay, we're not just organizing one thing, we're organizing a lot of different events. We did, in 2019 alone, and kind of folding just a week into 2018, for fairness, we did Bat Bash Charity Brawl, MagFest, and at that time the Mega Manathon event that went with it. So I did both a panel and a speedrun segment. Awesome Games Done Quick, Desert Tesla Charity Drive, RPG Limit Break, Summer Games Done Quick, ESA, European Speedrunner Assembly, MagWest Go, and then and that was all before August. And then I was already preparing for AGDQ 2020. So we basically did 7 or 8 major events, with Desert Tesla Charity Drive being the equivalent in complexity to trying to figure out how to keep in contact with a moving object that was every bit as complex as trying to stay in touch with the space shuttle going into space or something. Desert Tesla Charity Drive, we've got this car in the middle of nowhere, live streaming on Twitch while people are making donations to control the temperature of the car, turn on the seat heater, turn on the steering wheel heater, skip tracks of audio on the radio, redirect navigation to some random state, all kinds of silly things, all while donating to charity. It was really the strangest way ever of doing a charity event. Truly incredible. But the point is that I was involved in so many different things last year that it started to choke out everything else. And at a certain point, there's no more time to give up. I stopped watching TV. I watched YouTube only when doing chores. I stopped doing anything else. I would finish up work, and then I would start on the charity work immediately. And I was still prioritizing time with my kids, but at a certain point, there's no more time left to squeeze out. And it's one of the reasons that through the course of the last 2 months, I've been focusing very heavily on delegation, on various different things that I can send off to other people. And it's sometimes challenging because what I think quality should be and what they think quality should be is not always the same. They don't necessarily have the same stopping point for what is quote-unquote good enough. And they might stop and consider something that you consider inferior to be good enough. And delegating has a component of letting go. That's not necessarily always easy.
No, especially when you're used to running things at a certain quality for a long time, and you start to see drop in that. It sets a little flag off in your mind and says, well, hold on, this needs to be better.
Yeah. But on the other hand, the only way that I could continue to do the vast number of events we're now taking on was to delegate. And that has led to me designating leaders to take stuff on all of the different projects. And some of the projects we're doing are truly insane. I had a moment last week where I said, I don't have the time to do the important things I need to do in life. I'm building a flamethrower this weekend. It's hilarious because I legitimately am I am on a BattleBots team. I am on Team Scorpios. The Scorpios team will be recording content at BattleBots in a little bit, and it will air over the course of the summer. So I'll officially be on the team and in the BattleBox, like on camera. Totally didn't expect this to happen. TaskBot is officially sponsoring it, so our logo is on there and everything. It's awesome. But it's another event. There's logistics that have to be planned for that, like actually building a flamethrower. The components we're specifically doing the tool-assisted angle on is we are making tools to assist the driver by self-igniting and keeping track of, if possible, that the flame is in fact lit, automatically relighting it if necessary, so on and so forth. So automating the process of this flamethrower by using tools to assist the driver. Most drivers are currently doing all of that manually. They manually run the ignition. They manually set the amount of fuel being dumped out and release the ignition at a specific time, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of manual work to it. So we're trying to automate that through tools. It's great. It's all fun stuff. But it's another event. So I have delegated someone to be the lead for that. We are rebuilding TaskBot to not be based on a Nintendo Rob robot from the 1980s. That is a legal risk for us, and we need to fix that.
I would think that would be the first thing, yeah.
Well,
as cute as he looks.
Yeah, well, he's about to get cuter. So we did a prototype design that we put on the AGDQ 2020, the Yeti list of shirts, that we worked with the Yeti to make a design that we weren't necessarily happy with. It was in the prototype stage. We were still throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. So we called it a prototype shirt, and still 1,600 people bought that shirt. So it made another $8,000 for charity on its own. It's awesome. So I've got someone that's in charge of that art project, and it's not just art. We're doing everything. We're making LED eyes, and we're expanding what TaskBot can do. And all of that work requires a lot of different skill sets and someone to direct all that. So I've designated a leader to take that on. I've designated another leader to take on RPG Limit Break. We're doing Desert Tesla Charity Drive again. I'm mostly leading that effort, but I'm pulling other people in. We've got ESA coming up. I don't yet have a leader designated for that, but I will. I have someone designated for Summer Games Done Quick content. So all of these people are stepping up, and it just kind of... I could throw some names at you, but you'll see them when the events happen. So not everything is set in stone.
I think that's the best way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, since we might swap
you don't say
leaders,
something and then something changes.
Yeah. I will absolutely provide attribution where it's appropriate. For anybody who's listening to this, who's part of this and is upset I haven't said your name, I apologize. There's a reason for it. It'll happen later. But I had to. I was at a point where I just didn't have enough time. And then we've also got the problem of, for an event, what content do we submit? And I had generally always solicited input from other people, but it wasn't a formalized process. It was very arbitrary. It's still always going to be a little arbitrary when it comes right down to it, because there's factors that are based on bias that's hard to control, or based on recency. Hey, we just showed this run, we shouldn't show it again. There's all these other factors that might make it seem like that it's a little arbitrary in nature. But we want to select what task content we can do, and present that to the Games Done Quick or event, whatever event it is, whether it's RPG Limit Break or ESA, present that to the event submissions committee and say, hey, we've pre-vetted this. This is what we think is the best options. Why don't you pick the ones you like out of this smaller selection, rather than you having to go and look at everything that's ever been made. Here's our curated options for this event that we think we can do the best. So lots of that kind of work requires vetting those runs, making sure they work, and I now have people that are helping with that too, and I've delegated a leader to that. Then there's the biggest one, which is I started a company named Tool Assist, L3C, and that company is specifically set up to do one thing right now, to make donation tracking software for charities, so that charities doing live events can track donations coming in and keep tabs on what incentives are the donations are being sent to. The GDQ tracker has some amazing features, but it's also very GDQ centric, and it's not appropriate for the long tail of people who are just trying to raise money for their kindergartners to have recorders for band, or whatever the case may be. So we're trying to make something that we can use ourselves at our own events, like Desert Tesla Charity Drive. I mean, Desert Tesla Charity Drive is not anybody else's event; it's our event. We're running an entire live stream out of a moving vehicle with a 250 watt budget. So there's a lot of insanity going on with that one alone. We want to be able to track the donations for that, and there's some specific things we need. And rather than trying to adapt it, we decided the best way to do it was to build something for ourselves and then try to sell it to somebody else. So there's a whole other effort outside of the TaskBot community, but related to it and adjacent to it, to make these tools. So delegating in all of those different areas to try to reclaim time in my life, because I simply don't have enough of it.
Yeah, it's man, and that's got to be some hard calls sometimes, because like you said, you got to let go with quality sometimes. You have to really determine where to put your time, where to put your people, because if you don't have any time, you can't spend it freely. You can't spend it, and I'm obviously repeating everything you just said, but you can't put it in places where you really should be working somewhere else. You really are needed somewhere else. But man,
absolutely,
it's definitely a strength to know when to do that, and I commend you for that. To know when to say, you know what, I gotta let go. Well,
yeah.
Either way, you're still having to sit there with something that may not seem like quality to you, or at least not the peak of it, or even to the point of saying you may have an idea for something, but you don't have the time to deliver that idea. So you got to let somebody else give their idea.
Yeah.
To me, that's a weakness of mine, because I'll sit on something and I'll say, ooh, I got this idea, I can do this, and I can't do it. I really can't. But
I have so much more ambition than time. I have so much more ambition than time. But honestly, I think that a leader like me is, and I feel so weird saying that out loud, but I think a leader like me has some advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is I have so much vision in where I want to go, and I just want to share where I want to go. And if you want to come with me, that would be amazing, because I'm going somewhere absolutely awesome, and I would love for you to be going with me. And that invitation is a call that people respond to. The problem is when I'm trying to go 5 different places. So there are some downsides. But there's also this, wow, am I really capable or even the right person to be leading this size community and this size event? I'm not worthy of this. I'm some hack that shouldn't be allowed to do this. So that imposter syndrome, that imposter syndrome really is a challenge. It's easy to hear a negative message and believe that you're not capable of things, especially when things are hard. It's easy to fall into that imposter syndrome of believing you can't do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Or that you don't deserve the role you're in, specifically.
What would you say to people who do experience that? And I know we've gotten on a far more serious topic than I may have intended, but I think this is a good point to bring up. People who are in positions like yourself, maybe not over, having to delegate as many other people or having to deal with as many other people, but people who do lead groups and see critique constantly. What's something an advice maybe that works for you that you could give to them on that?
Oh, Gad. So I'm going to back up and answer this question in a different way. If you're going out to do something, let's phrase it differently. If you're trying to do something no one else has done, if you're trying to entertain in a new way or a fresh direction, if you're trying to do something hard, people will tell you the most terrible things because they don't recognize what you are doing has merit, or they don't think that you should be wasting your time, or they think that you wasted their time. And people say the most awful things. But if you're going someplace unique and interesting, and you have the charisma to say, hey, I'm going here, do you want to help? And you get other people to help you, you eventually will end up in a place where you have exceeded your ability that you need. At a certain point, you're just going to come to a crossroads where you don't have the skills that you need to take the next step. And you have two choices, give up or grow. And let me tell you, growing is not easy, because growing usually happens when you make mistakes. There are some D&D games that are based on the concept that you only gain experience when you fail at something. And I can really appreciate that, because a lot of the growth opportunities have happened when we did something wrong, and what we did had to be fixed. One of those by far was when we did not force everyone to have their stuff ready in time, and we allowed changes late in the game. I mentioned this earlier. We had to stop doing that. It was damaging the quality of what we were doing. We didn't have the time to rehearse. If you go back to just a year ago, AGDQ 2019, the content we had for that was not as rehearsed as it should have been. We had to make a hard call to say, no, if it's not done by the time the submissions happen, it's not happening. We're not doing this again. Because we just didn't allocate enough time to that, and we kept making that mistake over and over again. We made that same mistake back at AGDQ 2017. Now granted, if you get a chance to watch AGDQ 2017's task content, it was so ambitious to be ridiculous, but that's a side point. We made the same mistake though. We were still fixing things while we were walking up to the stage. And we can't keep doing that. We had to grow through that. We embarrassed ourselves. Our commentary was not what it needed to be. Various other aspects were subpar, and we had to change how we were doing things. And yeah, that failure hurt. I got some really awful comments on Reddit in particular, talking in excruciatingly raw detail about how I failed, and how I should stop trying, and how I needed to give up. And the growth came through realizing we'd made some mistakes and making meaningful progress to fix it and to do better next time. I think the only thing that makes me any different than any other leader of a project like this is I just don't give up. The only thing that makes me any quote-unquote better than another leader that is less effective is my persistence. I'm not actually that good at a lot of things, but I don't give up. And I always look for opportunities to grow. If I had one piece of advice for anyone trying to do something ambitious like this, don't give up.
Perseverance, man. Wow. Well, that's encouraging to even me to hear. All right, well, thank you so much. I think we're going to wrap this up here. This was an awesome thing talking to you about, and we got to hear a lot about what TaskBot is not only doing for charities, how it's branching into other aspects. It's almost hilarious to think that a battle bot will be bearing the TaskBot insignia, and will have individuals developing things for it, for combat, in a real-time environment.
Yeah.
But that is truly amazing. Do you have anything you want to plug before we close off?
Hi, I am dwangoAC. I'm keeper of TaskBot. You can find more about TaskBot at task.bot. You can find more about the TaskBot community, and really the best place to join the TaskBot community is over at discord.task.bot. Hi, I'm dwangoAC. I am ambassador for Task Videos. You can find more tool-assisted speedrun content at taskvideos.org. Hi, I am dwangoAC. I am the president of the North Bay Linux Users Group. I'm an advocate for open source software and doing things that are very fun in Linux. If you'd like to join us in the North San Francisco Bay Area, stop on by nblug.org. Hi, I am so many different other things. How about this one? I am a senior security analyst with Bishop Fox. We are hiring. If you are a white hat hacker or a penetration tester or in that security space, especially if you have any interest in research, hop on by us. We'd love to chat with you. This is a great team. I've really enjoyed working here. I only started last year, and it's been the most incredible job I've ever had in my entire life. It's awesome. I think that's the majority of the hats I hold, but you can find more content that I produce at twitch.tv/dwangoAC. I'm a partner on Twitch and stream haphazardly. You can find content that's made on that Twitch channel that's highlights and content we do at Games Done Quick and other charity events at the YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is youtube.com/dwangoAC. And if you'd like to help offset the costs of travel, equipment, all of the things that go into this, I would really appreciate your support at patreon.com/dwangoAC.